Okay, this is a continuity and change over time prompt. The focus is on social hierarchies in the Americas. And because the prompt says the extent to which they changed, that means that I could probably have two changes. Remember, we always want to have a two-part answer to a thesis, and that those two parts are going to become the body paragraphs. So my two parts could be change and change, or they could be continuity and change. Because the prompt specifically uses the word changed, I don't think that it's a good idea to ignore that and have two continuities as my two parts. So we need to come up with at least one change. And remember, we have to pay close attention to these dates because that's what the prompt is asking us to analyze. And we're going to look at that when we do our brainstorm on the next slide. So I set up my brainstorm like a timeline. You know, I had 1600 here and I had 1850 here. So I'm thinking generally, and it doesn't have to be mathematical, I'm going to break my evidence down into three parts, beginning, middle, and end, because in my body paragraphs, I want to have one of each. You know, I have a topic sentence, and then I have beginning, middle, and evidence. And then in between each of those is a small y, and then I do the big Y at the end, and that's a paragraph. So that's why I organized this way. So I'm thinking about social hierarchies in the Americas. In the year 1600, the Europeans have been there for about 100 years. Remember, Columbus, you know, is 1492, right? So they're pretty well entrenched there. And I know that the Europeans made a lot of changes happen for hierarchies. And because the year starts in 1600, that change had to all occur during European control. I can't go pre-Columbus and say, you know, the Aztecs had this, because that's outside of this prompt, all right? I know that the Europeans brought slavery to the Americas. I know that they created an ethnic-based hierarchy. And I know that there was also a wealth-based hierarchy. And I knew that the elites in 1600 held the political power, that the Creoles, for instance, in the Spanish American colonies were in charge. And I also know that there was a patriarchy. In the middle, the big thing that's happening is the revolutions are occurring, but a lot of these things continue. You know, we still have slavery. We still have the ethnic-based hierarchy. As I put here, we still have patriarchy. And to be honest, these economic elites are still in charge, okay? The Founding Fathers and the American Revolution, George Washington, those guys, were the economic elites of that society. And in the Spanish American colonies, with Simon Bolivar and whatnot, they were largely, you know, these Creole elites. And Haiti is the big exception there. We'll come back to that later. By 1850, I know that these revolutions are over, and these guys are all independent nations, okay? So I can make myself a note about that. Slavery is starting to be abolished. The right to vote is being extended to more people, and the feminist movement is starting. So I'm going to take those ideas and kind of break them down and take a look at what direction I can go in terms of having at least one continuity and at least one change. And so what that can look like is I'm going to say that there's a continuity of the elites holding political power. And even after the revolutions, that didn't really change. And then for my change, I'm going to talk about non-whites gaining power. I'm not saying that there's a complete overturn, but I'm looking at things like the right to, about slavery being abolished. I'm going to be able to say something about Haiti and that revolution, and that's going to work out okay as long as I make it clear that I'm focusing on gaining power and not on holding all of the power. You know, if I think about it maybe graphically, and I imagine that in 1600 compared to 1850, let's do this. If I've got elites with a power and then non-whites, that this gap is just going to close. something like that. So let's look at what that does for our analysis plan. For my continuity, which remember had to do with the elites holding the power, this is my beginning, middle, and end evidence. So there's an ethnic-based hierarchy in 1600. Why did Europeans control the colonies? Not why was it ethnic-based. Why was there European colonial control to begin with is going to be my small y. I'm going to move on and talk about how in the late 1700s only the rich had the power. Why did those guys want independence? Why did George Washington, why did Simon Bolivar, want to be independent? And then by 1850, I can say that the Creoles, for instance, in the Spanish American colonies, still held the power. And basically, I just want to say, why did independence work? I'm trying to avoid, and it might seem weird, but in these small y's, I'm trying to avoid stepping on the toes of why my continuity happened, because that's going to be at the end of the paragraph. Since my continuity was these elite social classes dominating, why, and I should say, continue, let me just make this clear, to hold political power. That's going to be my big why. Why did that continue over this whole time period? So down here, I'm just focusing on why the colonies, why the revolutions, why did they get their independence? So here's the analysis for the change paragraph, which remember had to do with an increase in political power for non-whites. So we're going to start with this ethnic-based hierarchy. We have the Haitian Revolution as creating an idea of racial equality, and that's the late 1700s. And then we have slavery starting to end. So for my small y's, why were Europeans, why did this hierarchy put Europeans at the top? Why did the Haitian Revolution start? And why did people challenge slavery? And then the big idea is going to be, why did non-whites gain status and power? And we want to make clear when we're writing about this, I think this is the key word here, that it's not complete equality. For instance, and it would be okay to bring this up, after the fall of slavery, indentured servitude became a larger problem, and in many cases, it was a continued way for non-whites to be disenfranchised. So you just want to make sure you're looking at the big picture here. But that's a way that we can approach the analysis for this paragraph.
You say you want a revolution.